You're listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and it's time for this week's Long Island News, the show that talks to newsmakers and other important people from Nassau and Suffolk County that matter to Long Island and Long Islanders like you. So each week we'll have a conversation about issues that affect all of us. I live on Long Island just like you, and I want to know more about the people making the big decisions that affect all of us. So let's jump right into it, because my guest today is Nassau County Legislator Howard J. Kopel from District 7, who was installed as presiding officer of the Nassau County Legislature back in January, marking the 15th term of the governing body, and was reelected this past November to the legislature to serve his 8th term. Well, Mr. Kopel, welcome to this week's Long Island News.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, so for people that may not know much about you, maybe you could give us the Cliff Notes version of you and your resume. And I understand you were the deputy presiding officer before this recent appointment, but you could tell us more.
Sure. I was deputy presiding officer for the last 6 years before this January. And before that, there was 8 years as a legislator. A couple years, actually, the last few years before deputy, I was alternate deputy. So, yeah.
So you've been in there.
I've been there for a while.
Right. And doing this kind of thing, right? But
yes.
So now, as the presiding officer, you control the legislative calendar. You lead the meetings and you call items for a vote. Is there more to the role that we wouldn't know about?
Well, sure. People don't realize it's actually an administrative job as well, because we've got a staff. We've got a staff of, 40, 50 people who report to me in one way or another.
Wow.
Uses of the chamber. Little things like things like uses of the legislative chamber for other purposes. People would request the use of the chamber when it's vacant for other public meetings. I would have to approve that.
Right.
Call hearings. In other words, there are a lot of things that are going on beyond the regular scheduled legislative meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I've run a company for quite a few years, since actually late 1985. Running an office is not something that's strange to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, the organizational skills just needed just to keep that together.
Yes.
How many legislators are we talking about? I think it's about 19 or 20.
19. 20 would be a problem, right?
Yeah, I guess
because
we only
you
have
deadlocks.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That lets us know why we come to those numbers.
Yes.
Yeah,
you'll always have an odd number in any legislature, for that matter. Right. You'll have an odd number, just so that you just don't get stuck.
You can avoid it as many times as possible. Yeah.
Sure.
Now, I understand that you plan to prioritize fiscal responsibility, particularly with federal pandemic funding, public safety and infrastructure repairs and upgrades. Can you tell us more about this and what you'd like to get done during this term?
Well, sure. The federal government, for better or for worse, poured out a lot of money during and following COVID. Untold billions of dollars. Nassau County got quite a bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
Nassau County historically has had a fiscal control board. When I say historically, at least for the last the years that I've been there, the fiscal control board has been actually they declared a control period, and that hasn't stopped
right.
For all these years.
That's NIFA, right?
NIFA. That's exactly right. And we'd like to eventually get rid of that. The thing to do is to use that money to make sure that going forward, the county is fiscally responsible, spends money wisely, and we use that, in other words, so that to ensure that we don't have to raise taxes, which is terribly important, because Nassau is one of the, if not the, possibly highest tax jurisdiction in the country.
Right.
Although I would hasten to say that the vast majority of those taxes have nothing to do with the county itself, county government.
Right.
The vast majority, 77% or so, on average, is school taxes.
Yep. Yeah.
And those are set differently. Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of, like you said, a lot of the COVID money, and as citizens of Nassau, we were hearing how, we can, all the great ideas of how to spend this money, and we were kind of flush for a long time, and there were only a few voices on the outskirts that saying, "Hey, it doesn't last forever, and if it goes, you can't make a plan for the future on this." Because this is going to be gone. The other thing is a lot of that money has not been spent. And as far as optic goes, it doesn't really look great. But the county executive was carving out his a $10 million chunk of some of that money to throw the party.
Well, I think that's an unfair characterization of what's going on.
But those are the optics, and it didn't look good.
Well, it depends. It depends who's describing the optics, I guess, right?
Then go for it.
Okay, right. So we're talking about not a $10 million party. What they're talking about is we've got the 125th anniversary of Nassau County. Mm-hmm. Now, the funds. First of all, let's take a step back and say that we want to use those funds. That it's a one-time windfall in terms of getting those funds. Right.
What was the intent?
We want to use it.
What was the intent?
I'm sorry?
What was the intent of that money? What is it supposed to be?
Well, okay. So the federal government had guidelines for the use of the funds, backfilling losses of revenue, for instance, and they have other uses, broadband, construction, and other COVID nexus or related uses. But it's a one-time thing. And if you use one-time funds and you establish programs, as some people might want, those programs never die. That's just the nature of things. You establish a new program, the program lives forever. Right. But the money to pay for it doesn't live forever. And once you've used that money, it's gone. And you've got to keep the program going, and you've got to raise taxes then. And that's just not going to happen. At least not if I have anything to say about it. And I know our county executive, Bruce Blakeman, is of a similar mind. Mm-hmm. So therefore, we're not going to go ahead and establish new programs. That does not make sense. But to your point about you throwing a party, that's not actually throwing a party. And that's, as I said, an unfair characterization. What that money is going to do is going to be used to attract tourism, attract new people and businesses to come to Nassau. And when they do come, they spend money. And I'll give you an example. There's money being used now to bring people in for the World Cricket Tournament. Now, I know very little about cricket. It kind of looks like a funky baseball game, but it is massive around the world. And as a matter of fact, there's going to be one of these games, India-Pakistan, which I think is going to be played in Nassau. Right. Because we've got the World Cricket Championship. That's how some of this money is being used. Okay. And that game alone will attract more viewers around the world than the Super Bowl, than our Super Bowl. So this is a chance to showcase Nassau and all the benefits that it has for people and how beautiful Nassau is. People will talk about it. We've got all these visitors coming in to watch all these games. It's a tournament. We've got our beautiful beaches, our beautiful parks, and all these great things. So to call it a party, as I say, it's not only unfair, it's kind of disingenuous. It's just a political thing to do.
Right. You're listening to this week's Long Island News on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and my guest today is Nassau County Legislator Howard J. Kopel from District 7, the presiding officer of the Nassau County Legislature, who was reelected this past November to the legislature to serve his 8th term. Okay, well, that's a good explanation. So as far as the optics go, but they didn't the rest of the chunk of the money that the federal government gave to Nassau is still in that account. None of that's been utilized.
Well, there's as I said, there are many uses for that money, and some of it is we've taken a lot of it into reserves.
Which means what? What do you mean into reserve?
Well, let me tell you what's going on. We've got, just for example, we've got a massive overhang of tax refunds that we have to pay in Nassau, hundreds of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. The reason for that, and I won't go too deeply into the weeds, but we've got something called the county guarantee, and it's a funny thing where if people overpay because their properties are found to be overassessed, mm-hmm. Nassau County has to pay refunds, which is fair enough when you're talking about Nassau County taxes. But what happens is Nassau County has to pay refunds for every taxing jurisdiction within the county. That's the only county in the state where this happens. So we might take in 13 cents of every tax dollar for the county, and we're paying 100 cents, 100% of refunds, and that's not great math.
Yeah, no.
So we've got this massive overhang. The state will not repeal it, even though we've requested them to repeal this county guarantee. So over the last few years, we've especially now with our new county executive, Bruce Blakeman, we've managed to repay hundreds of millions of dollars out of that overhang. We've had a ratings increase for Nassau County bonds. Mm-hmm. Because of this, because of the fiscal responsibility, we're going to be saving taxpayers large amounts of money going forward. Mm-hmm. So the benefits, when you talk about optics, you may not see that right today. Mm-hmm. But over time, it's just factual. We're going to be saving fortunes of money. So you don't see the money that's not being taxed, but you would see it if it were being added to your taxes.
Right, right.
And so you're actually not seeing some of the benefits, which is a good thing in that way.
Yeah, I come from a time when if it looked bad, you didn't do it, even if there was nothing wrong with it.
That's politics 101, right?
Yeah. Except those rules seem to be out the window for our day and age in politics. Even if it looks bad, they don't care. We're doing it anyway. And nobody actually takes a look just to say what looks bad. We've gone past that step.
Yeah, we're going much further. Actually, we're going much further because we're not worried as much about how it looks to some people who might want to mischaracterize it. Right. We're trying to do the thing that's right and responsible. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, I don't need to do this job. I've had my career in business and in law. Mm-hmm. I just like to get some good things done, and I think that is a fair description of a lot of my colleagues as well.
Sadly, not all of them.
Definitely not all of them.
Yeah. Well, I do want to get to the very controversial item lately. That's the Sands proposal for the site of the Nassau Coliseum.
Yeah, sure.
And now there's a legal fight between the county executive and Hofstra University over the contracts and such. Where are we with this? I've spoken to some of the politicians, and some of the responses about the Nassau Coliseum was that it was a missed opportunity, that we could have done other things with it. The thing that always puzzled me, or has puzzled me since this started, is that we spent, I believe it was close to $25 million refurbishing the Nassau Coliseum. And the result was that it no longer became a viable arena for hockey because we took out seats, and now they couldn't use it. The Islanders couldn't use it because the National Hockey League wouldn't let them. So we had a stadium that was viable for National Hockey League games. We did a refurbishment, and all of a sudden it didn't fit the bill anymore. Was that planned? I mean, what? That just sounds...
Actually, they at that time, you're going back a number of years, but I think the hockey team was moving anyway. Mm-hmm. The hockey team was moving anyway, so we didn't have a top league team over there. So I think the way it was refurbished at the time, and it wasn't by the county, it was by a lessee. and it was intended for use for other things that were supposedly going to bring in perhaps minor league games, but beyond the hockey. But it was going to also be used to bring in concerts and other types of events.
Yeah.
It didn't work out the way it was planned, and so the entire site has been. And this is a massive, beautiful site, right?
It's
right,
a shame. It's a
real estate right in the center of the county.
It's a real shame.
And it's been underutilized terribly for decades.
Yep.
For decades. So,
but we needed a new one, so we built a big arena over, and and it's also been spoken about, that this is the new financially or fiscally, this is the new way to get public money into private pockets real quick. Build an arena.
Well, that's the other way around. Actually, there's private money coming into the county with this new arena that was proposed. I expect that you're talking about the Sands project.
Oh, that's Yeah.
So that hopefully will come to pass, and it's being 100% financed with private money. And a lot of money is coming into the county coffers,
although
which will
now we're at the point. We're at the point now, though, where they haven't gotten their gambling license, so that appears as though that's not going to happen. And
it doesn't appear that way at all.
No, okay.
The gambling license has yet to be awarded by the state. So Nassau County, if everything being equal, and assuming we're going to get the Sands project rolling back on track beyond the litigation that's going on now, that Nassau County, everything else being equal, has got the best site, the best transportation. We've got everything that should be used, because the other sites, for instance, Manhattan, who wants to run into Manhattan to do something like that? It's congested, it's dirty, it's noisy, it's whatever. You've got Queens. It's got other issues there. Nassau County's got that site is ideal. It would be not only the gambling, but it will have a world-class hotel facility. It'll have entertainment. It'll have restaurants.
When will we know that whether or not they got the gambling license or not?
The state hasn't awarded that yet, so that'll take some time. And as I say, the first thing to do is to get the Sands project back on track. We have got to get beyond this litigation that's going on now, and we're optimistic that it will indeed get back on track. We believe it will.
Right. Just a reminder, you're listening to this week's Long Island News on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and my guest today is Nassau County Legislator Howard J. Kopel from District 7, the presiding officer of the Nassau County Legislature, who was reelected this past November to the legislature to serve his 8th term. Well, we also have, what do we got? Another controversial item we talk about frequently on the show, the redrawn congressional and legislative maps. And a contingent of civil rights advocates and progressive groups are arguing that the redrawn legislative map violates state law by diluting the influence of Black, Latino, and Asian voters. I know you can't comment on any lawsuits or anything like that, but do you have any thoughts on the process and where it might end?
No, we believe that we've complied exactly with state and federal law. We believe we've drawn very fair maps. Beyond that, let's remember that federal law requires actually that you be colorblind, not that you do something to enhance a particular group. You're not supposed to do something like that.
Or detract from.
That's correct. So what this does is it does unite communities of interest to the extent possible. You're never going to have a situation where you don't cross any village lines. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. It's impossible to do otherwise. But to the maximum extent possible, this map really does work. We also have to remember that the opponents took a very long time to even figure out that a way to go ahead and try to invalidate the maps. It wasn't easy for them, and I don't believe they're going. In the long run, I think the courts are going to look at the maps that we've drawn, and they're going to say, this is exactly right. It complies with the law. I think that's the way it ought to be.
I think it's a tug of war that's never going to go away.
No, it's never going to go away because the Supreme Court has always said that drawing legislative maps is inherently a political process. And to the extent that politics get involved, the courts don't like to get involved.
Right. Yeah. We've talked about gerrymandering. That's exactly, that's the issue that we're really talking about. Something that's been going on, I understand, for about 216 years. And yet everyone in those 216 years have said it's just a skosh away from being totally illegal.
Yeah, well, everybody tries to, everyone tries to maximize their own political benefit. And it's human nature, too. You're not going to end that. That's true. But that having been said, the map that we have now is correct. It works. And it may not be
this week.
Everything. Yeah, well, it may not be everything the Democrats love. But it's fair. And I'd also point out that when the Republican Party last took control of the legislature, which is going back the 2009 elections, but starting in 2010, that term, those maps were drawn by the Democrats. So you don't really know how things are going to turn out.
I think
it's a matter of policy more than anything. I think.
I also think that the powers that be realize that this is never going to be settled. So every 10 years, you're going to do it again. I think
every 10 years.
That's
not only that. Not only for that reason. That's not a question of the powers that be.
Well, it seems to be a governor of keeping things as close to equal.
That's not the reason.
No,
that's not the reason you redraw it. You redraw it because population shifts.
Movement, right.
You've got population movement, and by law, by federal, by state law, you've got to have one man, one vote. One person, one vote, excuse me, these days. Right. You got to say it right. And one district may gain population, another one may lose population, and so they become unbalanced. And you've got to redraw it in order to be compliant with that principle. Right. Very important principle.
One of the questions that we've seen it in national government only because now. Would you be considered the Speaker of the House in the Nassau Legislature, in comparison to our federal, system? The laws come to you. Do you decide what things are going to be voted on and what things you're going to hold back, like we've seen in national government?
Yes, technically that is true, but in real life, I'm not a dictator.
No, I
don't do things the way I want to do it. I do things in accordance with the wishes of my colleagues. We discuss things. I discuss things with.
Oh, sure. I don't mean to imply that. What I would like to know, though, is there a place where the public can see what laws are up for consideration and what ones are being overlooked?
Oh, certainly. Everything that the majority or minority anytime wants as a new law, you file it with the clerk of the legislature. It's filed, and that's a public document, and that's available for everyone to see.
Okay, is that a freedom of
nothing hidden.
Is that
nothing hidden over
Is that a freedom of information?
And not only that, but typically, if there's anything important that one side wants, that side's going to hold a press conference. Right, especially if they think that the other one's not going to go along. Then they'll hold a press conference. It's out there.
We've been looking at during the campaigns here. We've heard the barbs tossed that the president should have done this and should have done that, and we've come to find out that it's Republicans that didn't vote for this bipartisan bill that they had ready to go in the jammer, and then they want to turn around and blame the existing administration for not doing anything. We didn't get to really know until someone said it that, hey, there's a bill there. They just refused to vote on it. So now they want to do nothing, and then they want to blame the other side for nothing getting done. This obfuscation is the best word I can think of. It's ridiculous. I saw them last night. Did you see the president's speech last night?
I did.
I saw a bunch of straight-faced men sitting there, no reaction whatsoever. To me, that's not engaged. The machine is not working.
Well, actually, what I think you saw last night was a very angry man yelling. It was a bitter partisan speech on the one side, and I think the fact that a lot of people sat there stone-faced was maybe to their credit, because nobody was jumping up and screaming at the president, calling him names or anything like that. The decorum was maintained to that extent.
If you want to call it that. I thought the Republican response was horrible. I thought the Republican response was damn near pornographic.
Well, I thought that the Democrat response, quite frankly, showed a tremendous lack of decorum. It seemed like a revival meeting with people jumping up and screaming and practically. Yeah,
I saw Marjorie Taylor Greene get up and scream something out. That certainly isn't decorum. But
I agree. I don't think that was a good thing to do, and I'm not going to defend that. I wouldn't attempt to defend that. But look. This was an election speech. It was nothing else but an election speech. He mentioned the former president, not by name, but referred to them as my predecessor or something like that. I think it was 13 or 14 times, attacking him. And quite frankly, whatever you think of Trump, there was a lot of misinformation thrown out there. I mean, when the president...
This is ironic, very ironic.
No, well, when the president threw out... Yeah, well, I'm not...
We're going to have to...
Whatever you think of Trump,
yeah, we're going to have to...
about the speech last night.
We're going to have to agree.
Last night, for instance, when he talked about the fact that he reduced the deficit by over $1 trillion, well, of course, that was after he increased it by considerably more than that.
Come on, Donald Trump is the king of increasing the deficit. Don't even go there. Don't even go there. We're going to agree to disagree, Howard. We're definitely going to agree to disagree.
I'll tell you what, Bill. Why don't you and I will run for president and vice president?
Let's do it.
Head up the ticket, and we'll solve all the problems together.
Let's go. I'm in. The fact that we can, with decorum, part as friends and say we agree to disagree. That's to me the coolest thing that we could do right now in this atmosphere.
Do you know what I said in my induction remarks? I said that 99% of the time we'll agree. We'll disagree when we have to, right, and still go home friends.
And I bring back Reagan and Tip O'Neill. They used to argue like cats and dogs in the middle of Congress, and when the day was over, they were down at the corner bar sharing a beer, talking about whatever. We need to get back to that.
Perfect example.
My guest today has been Nassau County Legislator Howard J. Kopel from District 7, the presiding officer of the Nassau County Legislature. And we want to thank you for taking the time to be here today to speak with us. And again, promise you'll come back in a few months and update us on everything that's happening in the county government.
You bet.
Now the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to get on out of here. I'm Bill McIntyre. Remember, you can listen to us by searching for this week's Long Island News wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're right here every Friday on the radio at 3 p.m. on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.